And it's my absolute pleasure, and I can't believe how long I've known Wiggy, actually, far, far too long, to welcome a real pioneer of the sport right from the start, right from those early doors, and is still so heavily involved in the sport in Wala, and has had such an influence on the sport for so very, very long. We were thinking it were about 30 years, weren't we?
Yes.
And some.
Yeah.
30 years and some.
Probably and some.
So
Yeah.
Amanda Wigglesworth, but those who know Women's Rugby League will know her as Wiggy. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's start at the very beginning. I've been really excited about this interview because you just sort of span everything that we're talking about in pioneering years. So tell us, first of all, how did you get involved in Rugby League? Where are you from, and your first initial days?
Right. Well, I'm from Castleford. Born and bred in Castleford, and it's pretty much all the kids used to have a rugby ball in their arms, not a football. So rugby's always been around me, but the place it really came from was my dad. He used to have to look after me and my brother when we were kids because my mum had to go out and work. So he played rugby. So he used to drag us along to all his games.
Who did he play for?
He played for Allerton Bywater.
Oh, no, well, yeah.
Allerton Bywater Colliery rugby team. Anyway, when he got injured, me and my brother were like, yes, we won't get dragged around now anymore. But he decided to take on refereeing, so we still got dragged around. And you'd find us in a corner of a tap room in a pub where mucky fat and pot pies were. We'd be sat there. But, you know, I started to get interested in it. And when he decided to give up refereeing, he started coaching, and he coached lads which were a couple of years younger than me at that time. And I used to go down and help him. So, you know, I was always under his feet. I was like, can I play ball? Can I pass it? Can I, you know? And I used to love it because we used to play bulldog as well, and I used to just love going in and tackling old lads, you know. And that's where my passion came from. And also, I were they weren't called Castleford Tigers back then. They were just called Castleford. You know, going down lane and watching them, you know, men's games. So it started really early on for me. Unfortunately, back then they didn't have anything for girls or women. So
right.
Yeah.
So what did you do then? So what were you doing? So how did you get involved in playing? So you were just around it all the time, weren't you?
Oh yeah, and rugby league is, you know, it's in my blood. And I ended up moving away and going working down in London, and then I came back to the village, Allerton Bywater, and a few of them had started playing in a women's team, and I was like, "You're joking me?" And they said, "Oh no, why don't you come down and have a look?" Anyway, Sam Wood, Michaela Hurst, Paula Williams were all the ones that were saying, "Come down, come down, come down." Anyway, I ended up going to South Leeds Sports Centre where Hunslet Arquettes were playing. And that were it. First training session, never looked back after that. I were in and I loved it.
So when would that have been? How old would you have been when you did that?
I was 27 there. I mean, that sounds like a late starter, but back in the day, there were no age thing on it. You know, you were like, oh, we're just, you know, getting women together and you know, and playing rugby. So I started right back from very beginnings at 27, learning how to play the women's how to play rugby league really. And we had 2 training sessions a week, and they were intense training sessions, but you loved it. You loved getting flogged. You loved you were like, can we do tackling at end? You know, like you wanted to get in and get involved and get as dirty as possible. And that just then started feeding you. You were like, right, when's the next game? You would fight for your shirt. Back then, when you were in a team, you were in a team, and you know your loyalties were in this team. It wasn't that often that players would migrate to other teams. You know, when you were in, you were in.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And what was it like playing at that time then? Because you were Hunslet, weren't you?
that's right, yeah.
So were you connected to the Hunslet team, or what were you actually doing with that?
I think we tried initially, right back in the beginning when we first started training at South Leeds Sports Centre.
Mm.
We ended up going from like one place to another, trying to get support from, because Hunslet had the area of of Leeds had quite a few teams, men's teams, so we tried to get affiliated with them, but nobody seemed to take us on,
Oh,
and
that's
we went
interesting.
from place to place. I think we tried about 4 different pubs around that area, and one of the pubs used to have like a stone bath at the bottom of the cellar. So um yeah, they just didn't really want to invest in a women's rugby team, even though we were, like putting lots of money behind bar, because not only can we play rugby, we can drink, like rugby players. So it was a bit disheartening. And then eventually we ended up at Milford Storm, and they welcomed us with open arms. But we had some bad experiences, particularly with a Hunslet team, that because they'd put us down as like a women's rugby team affiliated to them, they managed to get a grant, and we were bottom of the pecking order. We were right down at the bottom, and we used to join their committee meetings, and we were never heard, and we were never supported. And the things that got shouted at us when we were playing there, and we weren't allowed to go and play on that pitch because that's for the men's team, and we weren't allowed to go and train in there, so sometimes you find yourself training in a car park of a supermarket, because you just were not supported. And then we
Mm.
went to Milford, and they did show us some support, so
Yeah, so very different. So it's been really interesting doing this project that um, some of the women have had really great experiences, particularly of the community clubs that embraced them and really helped and supported them. And I know, as you've just described, that just wasn't your initial, it was just nobody wanted you apart from if you could bring in money for you to be
yeah.
able to for them to be able to use. So tell us, what was the difference at Milford and how they sort of embraced you and
Oh, they were fantastic at Milford, well, they treated us like, we were serious. They were serious about us. Uh, they helped us like with any fundraisers that we needed to do. Just the fact that we were made welcome, that was the biggest step. And then we could share things with them. Um, having that from being from the last team that were really, really nasty. I mean, they did used to call us some right names. They used to really shout some abusive stuff. It got that bad that we went to, me and Karen Lewis, we went to knock on a councillor who was on their committee. We knocked on their door and said, we need your help. We need you to help us because we're not getting heard, we're not getting seen. You know, people are shouting abuse at us. It's just all wrong. Anyway, he said his hands were tied. He was very, political about it and took a step back. So we didn't get anywhere with them. So going to Milford, where Charlie and his wife, they put food on for us. They made us feel really welcome.
yeah, it's a lovely, I mean, when Charlie Bray had it, I mean, I don't know so much. I know I was a rugby league development officer at the time, and oh, just such a lovely man. And the club, because they'd had a new clubhouse built and things, hadn't they, and
That's
had a few
right. Yeah,
bits done to it.
yeah, yeah. And Mal Meninga used to come down.
Oh, did he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. He brought me a rose once.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
that. You've hidden that in a under a bushel. That's the first I've
Yeah.
heard of that. So what was it like playing in the league at that time then? How many sort of, this would have been in the 90s, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh God, there were a plethora of teams. You had like 2 divisions, and there were like 10 in top, 10 in bottom, and it was great. We used to love the traveling to another team's place, seeing how they go about their business. But we loved the camaraderie of it all, like car sharing, and if it were a bit further away, we'd hire a minibus. So yeah, it were good times then, because you were constantly playing a game every week, whether it be home or away. And all right, yeah, you had your few teams where you were like, oh God, Wakefield Panthers this weekend, but you were excited, you got that butterflies and nervousness first, but when you got on there, you were like, you loved it. Oh yeah, we'd get like loads of points put past us, but we were just thrilled to get on there and see if we could. Oh well, I nearly scored. Yeah, nearly got there. We nearly kicked a goal. So it was, even though like score lines were quite big, where you had like your Wakefields, your Bradfords, and your Red Hills. Sometimes it wasn't all about the score line. It was just getting on that pitch and doing your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a community, wasn't it? That,
Yeah.
and other women have sort of talked about that, yeah, you got on and played the pitch, but it was after the games where the fun
Oh God,
started
yeah.
and everyone best mates.
You could give it all that off pitch, and then you'd be stood at a side at bar and like, oh, do you want a drink? No, yeah, do you want a drink? No, I'll get these. The yeah. I mean, there were no friends on pitch, don't get me wrong, because like I had a few friends that played in different teams, and it were like, right, business as usual, no friends on pitch until after, and then after we were like, best mates.
Yeah. And this was winter. This was purely in winter, wasn't it? There was no
God,
winter and summer at all.
No, it was 100% winter. I mean, I think that's hardened me off now, because I don't get cold as much as what everybody else does. But I used to say to them, yeah, well, that's what comes with years of standing out in shorts and t-shirt on sidelines, playing rugby, winter rugby. But yeah, it was. I mean, some of the pictures back then, they'd probably have 1 or 2 strands of grass on it, and you were covered in head to foot in mud, but it was great. See, that's why I've got a complexion like this. All that mud.
Right, Yorkshire roads. So it was brilliant. You were going home and away. How were you funding yourselves then to play?
We did all sorts of like raffles. I think we went as far as to do a car boot once upon a time, but you pay subs, you pay like your subs every week, and it would only like a couple of quid a week, and all that went to the running and the funding of it all. It would have been great if somebody had come along and said, oh yeah, we've got 50, 100 quid for you, pay your, because referees need paying, then there was the kit wash, then there were the food, and then there were like the raffle prizes, and people don't realise that until they start getting involved. It's easy to just come, pull a pair of boots on, put your kit on, play your 80 minutes, get off. But then the back scenes of it all is like, right, we need his league fees, we need to get his kits washed, we need a new kit, so you are tapping people up for sponsorship, and back then we used to have this guy he was from Hunslet, and Zamax, Sam, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he did all the rugby kits, and he used to give us a few kits. So, and he used to try and help sponsor us wherever possible.
Oh, brilliant.
So, it was mainly funded by ourselves.
Yeah. And where did what about with officials and things like that? How was it like getting match officials for games and things?
Oh, yeah, you really struggled. It were like, oh my God, I don't really want to. You could see that some of the referees didn't want to be there, kept looking at the watches, call early, and I thought that were a bit detrimental, really. I was thinking, hang on a minute, we deserve 80 minutes. Don't get me wrong, when we played the big teams, we were like, thank God for that. Thank God it's blown early, but I used to think to myself, we don't want to be treated like under 10s. And sometimes you felt like that.
Mm.
And as it progressed, as the years got on, we started to get referees that were decent and wanted to come and do it and said, oh, no, it's a right game. No, I want to do that,
Yeah, it took a few years, didn't it, for the referees to
Oh, it
catch
did.
on?
It did.
And the frustrating I used to have was they were always stopping if a woman went down injured. And I'm not saying there aren't some injuries you shouldn't stop the game for, but they used to be constantly stopping it. And I used to say, just get on with the game.
Yeah, just let it play out.
Yeah. So great times at Milford. You played a
Oh, yeah.
lot of roles in organising, didn't you? So as long as I've known you, you've always been busy.
Oh, yeah. After Milford, unfortunately, they folded. And then I went to play at York Acorn. So I did a stint there with Michaela. Loved it. And then they folded. But there's nothing to do with me and Michaela, by the way. It was just as it happened. And then after York, I think I had a little bit of a break. And then I went back in, but I was still like on the Wildler committee. Or was I then? No, I wasn't then. And then I started back up again at the age of 40. Started playing at Brighouse,
Wow.
with Patricia Furness, and she said, please come down. I said, well, actually, Brighouse is on my doorstep. I'm going to give it a go. Oh my God, I just knew once I got back into it, that were it. And that were in 2008. And here I am now, still going with running with things,
So
you
you're
just can't
still
seem to.
playing?
Oh God, no. My last game was age 54. Played
Wow.
against played against Liverpool University. The
Wow.
coach
I
says to
didn't
me,
realise you were
yeah,
54, Wiggy. Wow,
yeah,
that is there must be a record for that.
I was at Odsel at the time, and I says to him, he says, you're itching to get on that pitch, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I am, yeah. And he says, I tell you what, he says, at Liverpool, I'll put you on for 10 minutes. I said, oh, brilliant. Ended up playing 60 minutes. Oh, God, yeah. I think he was like, Wiki, come on, off. I'll leave her on.
Have you ever had a go at Masters then?
Yes, I did. Me and Michaela did. I think they had a West Yorkshire Masters. This were a couple of years ago, though, or maybe before COVID. But we had a go at that. But I think I might return to that.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
you know,
There's all sorts of teams popping up now. It's well worth having a look at.
yes, yeah. It's getting more. Again, it's been like a slow progression, but then it's out there, because like you had the men's masters, and now the women's is like, well, it's taking off. I think they had something going on in Blackpool a couple of months ago. They had they have like a little. Masters is great because you can just go in and join whichever team you want. If you've got too many players, you can go and play for somebody else. So, but you've still got that thing that I can't explain what that thing is, but it's like a magnet and it keeps pulling you to it, So
Yeah. Oh, an absolute legend with it. So when you're looking at your playing, and I'm going to come on to your Wildler in a minute because I think it's really important to sort of talk about that and how you've seen the game change over the years. What's your biggest memory? You were in some finals, Milford, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, we were in one of play finals and we won. That was the time that we went to Blackpool and there were nobody had ordered any trophies for us. So although we were on a high, you were like, yeah, we've actually won something. I mean, technically we should have had a trophy for always turning up, because Milford, Hunslet stroke Milford always turned up, regardless. But yeah, we turned up and there were no trophies there. So, it didn't rain on our parade. We were out in Blackpool. We just got absolutely hammered, celebrating, because we knew eventually it would come, because when you get a good team together and good players together, you just have to keep pushing it and keep pushing it and keep with it. And it came through.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Fabulous.
that's one of my, yeah.
Did you think that's one of your highs?
It is, yeah. That, and I played for Yorkshire when Dillard, our coach, he was coaching the Yorkshire squad. So I managed to do get a game for Yorkshire, and a couple of other finals with other teams that I've played for. So
yeah, because Brighouse were in finals, weren't they?
Oh God, yeah, they were. They played at Widnes, and we got a coach. We were all dressed the same. We had all as t-shirts, as polo shirts on, and we all got off at bus singular like that, and we got into changing rooms, and I nearly cried, because you had your own little locker bit, and it was phenomenal compared to places that you've been and got changed in. And then they took us through this tunnel and they said, we just want to show you around. And they showed us the massive Widnes pitch and the stadium. We were like in awe. Nobody spoke. It was deathly quiet. It was just such an amazing time, for us. And we threw everything at that game, and the just scored right in the last couple of minutes and beat us by 2 points. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd rather be beaten by 40 points than 2 points. But yeah, I've had some great finals experiences, but those are the two that come to mind.
I really mind. And what do you think about the lows then? What are the things that have been really tough?
It's always been having to fight to be, where we are now. It's criminal that it's taken 30 years to get to watching players on TV now, watching them, playing over in Australia. I mean, don't get me wrong, we did have like the internationals, but not like it is today. And it's taken so long for us to get that recognition, that were a low. Always fighting to be seen and heard, always, you want better things, because like with better things comes like better players as well. It were hard in those days. Some people left because they were like, oh, I can't be doing without abuse that I get at sidelines. But we're here, we're doing it.
You are.
And it's just a shame it didn't happen back then, when we had a lot of great players. We had a lot of great players back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just unfortunate that they didn't get the recognition back then that they should have done.
Yeah, well, that's what this is about. It's about players like you that have committed, and people like you. You're not just a player, an administrator, have given so much to the sport and continue to give to the sport, that this project's about, really. Because it's given that recognition and that respect for what you've done in really difficult times. And when you say abuse, it was very personal abuse, wasn't it? And very nasty, some of the abuse.
Yeah. Oh God, they definitely would not get away with it this day and age, calling you names that you got called. But you just battered on. But you shouldn't have to go through that, because mud sticks. Sometimes you were taking some of them comments home with you. You were thinking, am I really that bad? Am I really this? Am I really that? And it wasn't nice. But
yeah. But you cracked on. Right. So is there anything else on your playing days before I go on to Wala that we've missed?
Not really. I think we've had some good times, and I think most, if not all teams can relate to this. When you become that team, you're like watertight. Nobody messes with my teammates, and that camaraderie and that having them thoughts of, they've got my back, I've got their back, playing like that and a team, you have that confidence about you because right, well, I've got my team with me, it doesn't matter, even when we were going to places like Barrow, where it was like a 4-hour journey. I mean, one at times it took us 4 hours to get out of Barrow because we'd gone the wrong way, but we didn't care. We were in a minibus drinking beer on the way home, so we were like, yeah, well, we're still in Barrow. So it's, it's not just the playing, it's not just the 80 minutes, it's not just the skill set, it's the people that you've met throughout it all.
Yeah, it's a real sense of belonging, isn't it, and community.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. So I want to go on to your Wala now, which is, for those that are listening, Women's Amateur Rugby League Association, that Lala began in the 1980s and then it changed into Wala sort of beginning of the 1990s. Tell us about your involvement with that. So this is basically the group that organises everything for the women, isn't it, in the sport, and it started off that it was just Winter League.
That's right.
So tell us how you got involved with that and what your roles have been.
Well, I was a bit of a late starter, to be honest. I came to Wala about 2013, but I was playing at Brighouse at that point, and I used to see them all. That was their meeting point, and I used to be like, "Oh, I wonder what they're talking about." And when you think, "Oh, this ain't right, that ain't right," and I used to voice my opinions to like then Karen Lewis and Michaela, and they were like, "Well, why don't you come on committee then? Why don't you come on committee? If you think," I think they were saying, "if you think you can do better, you'll come on committee." But I thought, actually, I won't mind, see what goes on, see behind the scenes, because people don't realise just how labour intensive it can be, or problem solving. You're taking, you don't get paid for this, it's a volunteer job, and there's no contractual hours. You take a phone call when you need to take a phone call. So I got involved then, and I was just an officer at that point, just seeing how they run Wala and the teams and stuff. So they were like your registrations secretary, fixtures secretary, chairman, the secretary, your referee appointments officer. So I didn't realise there were all these little jobs that people had to do, and I was like, oh my God, that's an eye opener to start with. And as the years progressed and I got more and more involved, I started doing a bit of media stuff as well, like making sure that the results went out. And, I thought it was more important that people were aware that Winter League is here, Wala's here, it's still here. These are the teams that are playing this week. These are the results from last week. Come and show your support, and just kept banging it out there. And we've had some fantastic support from League Express. Phil Hodgson, he's been an absolute diamond, because me and him still liaise every week, like what's your fixtures list, what's going on. So for me, it's always been about having my say about what I think, and hoping that everybody else is on the same page as me, which these people that are committed to Wala are on the same page. They want to see it, progress. They want to see it still carry on, because not everybody likes summer rugby or wants to be part or can't be part of summer rugby, because the holidays, kids are at home, whatever, so they want to throw a ball around. So do try and keep the Winter League going as long as possible.
Yeah.
And then
And
sometimes it's a starting point for new teams like Murfield. I live in Murfield, and this year they've produced a team. Now I didn't think Murfield were ready for that, but it's a brand new team. Well, it's a new team with some experienced players in there, and you just want to help them along. You want to like. For me, I'd like to see in every village town a women's team. So it's as though you're pushing that boat out to sail, kind of thing, and try and help them as much as possible. They might
so
go
were
to
you,
some,
yeah, they might. So were you there when the transition happened, where the rugby foot? Because just so people know sort of the history of it, for years the RFL had nothing to do with the women's league, and it was under Barla's auspices,
Barla,
wasn't it?
that's right, yeah.
And then it was about 2012-13. I can't quite the exact date that when there was talk of, right, we're gonna, because the men had gone to summer, and they were saying, right, we're gonna take all the teams to summer that want to come to summer. Were you part and parcel of that when
I
those
came
decisions were
just
being
a
made?
little, I came just a little bit after that transition, because there were a tsunami of like everybody were up in arms, like what's going to happen? There were a lot of uncertainty, and when you've like created something and you've nurtured it for years, and then somebody comes along and just takes it, you're like, what's going to happen now? I think there were a lot of fear and a lot of what ifs going, because it wasn't clear cut what were going to happen. And when it did happen, we just carried on regardless. As long as teams were still putting, a requesting to play winter rugby, then we said, well, we'll still keep going, because we could have gone, all right, that's it, we're done.
Yeah.
We didn't.
And interestingly, I haven't quite done all the stats to it, but you see a significant drop in Wala at that time, because I've got all Karen's
Yes.
stuff, which she's
Yeah.
kindly given me. So I'm sort of at the moment getting to grips with what the effect it had initially on Wala, and what you were doing, because before then you had a healthy competition, teams were playing each other, everyone thought winter, they didn't think anything about summer. And then all of a sudden, some teams are asked to, should you play summer, should you play winter? And it was a very, and you do definitely see a drop in numbers for
Yes.
Wala.
Yeah, the competition did take a massive hit there, because the new and exciting summer league, we'll go see what they've got to offer, and it was a struggle trying to get. Don't get me wrong, teams did come back. They were like, well, we've tried some, we didn't like it, we're coming back to winter, because in summer you have a lot of people that have a lot of commitments, but it was taken out of our hands, so we just had to roll with what happened. We were trying to get other teams to come and join us, and new teams, they seem to come to us first and then go to summer, so they'd have like we'll have a little tester in winter, see how we go, and if we do well, we'll go into summer. So we had them, they were springboarding off Wala to go to summer. But we said, look, we've just got to let them do whatever. And we got regular teams coming back every winter supporting us. And, like I said, we were getting these new teams as well. So although we were upset by it, because there were never any kind of meetings or negotiations or talks about it, that's what we're doing, and that's what you've got to put up with, kind of situation. So we tried as best to get, and it did dip, and then you were thinking, well, is it worth it? But then like I said, they just kept coming back, and like this year we had 11 teams put in, so and they keep coming back,
and they keep coming back, and they playing in the competition, don't they?
A lot of people are trying to find where they fit in. Summer rugby, it's great. It's great if you're young and athletic and you still live at home with your mum and dad. It's great, because any, injuries or anything, you know, the older end, who have like cars and mortgages to pay for and that, you know, don't want to be in that area of, well, I might get concussed, I might, you know, I might get this, I might, but you can do in winter rugby, you know, but a lot of the older ended players tend to come to winter because they think, oh, I'm probably not good enough for that team, or they probably won't want me, or I don't know where I fit, you know. But there's a lot of winter teams that go, come on, come with us, you know, come and train with us, come and play with us, you know. So they've still got that. It's not always about the winning, you know. They do
A real
still
social
support
league.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
real social league. And you
Yeah.
still do, and you have done for as long as I can remember. Probably it started early 90s, the Easter weekend, where you have your big finals day.
Yeah, it's still going. It's still going. I mean, we ask Pat Crawshaw to come down and, you know, hand out the trophies and that. But that's a good social as well, you know, like even if your team's not playing, you can go and watch other two teams play, 4 teams play, you know, have a drink, have a social. But yeah, we're still keeping that going, which is good. Unfortunately, we've had to say goodbye to the county of origin, which has always been like a Wala thing, because we weren't getting the Lancashire teams. You know, it is predominantly Yorkshire teams that are in Wala, and we are grateful for the Lancashire teams that do join us. You know, but there's just not enough to make like a Yorkshire Lancashire battle.
All right. When did that finish then?
That finished, I would say, just before COVID.
COVID
Yeah.
had a bad effect everywhere, didn't it?
Oh, it did. It did. It kind of, it put everything on hold, and I were always mindful. I hope we don't go backwards. You know, even though it put it on hold, I was like, please let it, you know, restart to where we'd finished. You know, but you know, it did. It had a knock-on effect on quite a few teams and players and situations. So
Yeah. And as you say, the league itself, I mean, you run all your disciplinaries, don't you? You run all,
yes,
you
yeah,
know,
we've got
a whole host of things.
yeah, we've got 2 guys, 2 referees on our committee, and they're great. And they do all the disciplinary hearings, and yeah, they're firm but fair. And you know, without them, you know, God knows what had happened. You know, but they are, yeah, they're really good guys, and you know, and they get us some decent referees sorted out as well. So it's good to have them on board.
Oh, that's brilliant. So when you're sort of looking back, I mean, I don't know if you've missed anything from your Wala days. I don't know, because I know you've written copious notes about the sort of peaks and the troughs, and I think it, you know, that transition, not just for the women's game, but for the men's game, was really, really difficult. And whether we saw a decline in women's rugby league, I don't know without doing the statistics. But when you sort of look back to what's happened and you see the game now, what's your thoughts around the opportunities for women and girls?
Oh, I think, thank the Lord that we are here now doing this. A little bit envious, to be honest. I'm like, oh, it'd have been great around about our time, that, because there'd have been something to play for. Although, yes, there was something to play for, like your team, your county, you know, and to a certain degree, yeah, your country. But there's a lot more competition now, so it would have been great. But I'm so happy that we've got to where we are now compared to where we were before. You know, I think it was a very, very slow process, a long drawn out process that could have been just accepted, and they could have run with it sooner. You know, I mean, look at Australians; they're 10 years in front of us.
And they weren't. They were
No,
well behind us, because they, in 1993, I found an article that women weren't allowed to play. They did, but they were not. There's a thing saying women should only officiate and coach in 1993, and we were well underway by then in our
yeah,
leagues.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they'd have said that to us back then, I'm sure we would have said, "Oh, we're going to play anyway. We don't care about insurance or all like that. We're playing, you know."
And I think that's what
Simple as
happened
that.
in Australia, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
They
I
just
mean,
cracked on.
we used to play in some really adverse weather conditions. You know, sleet, snow, frost. You know, mudslides, everything. Nowadays, they're a bit like, yeah, it's called off because it's raining. What? What do you mean?
What do you mean it's raining?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
dear.
We had it a lot tougher back then, but do you know what? It were all worth it to get us where we are now.
Absolutely. And it's people like you. It's people like you that I'm just in awe of what they've given to the sport and constantly give with a smile, with a resolve, and keep pushing for women to be able to play the sport, whatever the circumstances, which is really important.
Yeah,
And yourself included in that when you start doing masters or even wheelchair. I think you might have a go at wheelchair.
yeah.
I think you might be a bit good at that as well. So what does being involved in rugby league really mean to you?
Oh, what does it mean? Well, I can't get out of rugby league. That's my problem. I like to see progression. I like to see things moving forward, and things are moving forward rapidly. I have no part in any of that, uh, like now, but I would still like to see people, you know, going forward. If I see somebody, I'm like, do you play rugby? No, do you want to play rugby? There's a team down the road. You know, I'm always trying to promote people to play rugby, to go do rugby. You know, there's a girl at work. I keep saying to her, are you going to go training on Wednesday? She's like, I've never played rugby in my life. Well, start because you know, it will grab hold of you. You know, so for me, I'm always going to be around that, you know, around that. Even if it means just sat at home with my dad watching rugby on TV, you know, it's something I cannot pull away from.
It's in your blood, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Oh, Wiggy, thank you. Thank you ever so much for your time. It's been, as I say, I've been looking forward to this. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for everything you've done for Women's Rugby League. You've been an
Oh,
absolute pioneer. And thank you for sharing with us today.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.